Hello guys, welcome to a new Videos Fischer series. Today we're round number 18 of the Bled tournament of 961. It's Fischer against Tigran Petrosian, and this is a really nice Caro-Kann with an instructive endgame, so I can't wait to show you the game. Fischer has the white pieces and he starts with e4. c6 by Petrosian, the Caro-Kann, and actually Fischer doesn't like playing against this opening since the Soviet players kept playing it, especially in the candidate tournament of 1959, which leads to dry and solid positions, which Fischer doesn't really like. He likes to play dynamic games. So, for example, against Max Euwe, he played this Panov-Botvinnik attack with c4. But here he plays knight c3, going for something else. Says after pawn takes, knight takes. Here there are multiple moves for Petrosian: knight to f6, bishop to f5, knight to d7. He plays knight d7, the Karpov variation named after Anatoly Karpov. Here knight f3, knight f6. Since after knight takes we can take back with the knight and not ruin our pawn structure. So what now? Bishop c4. Fischer needs one more move to castle, while black needs at least 3 more moves. Bishop goes to f5, queen e2, still not saying whether we want to castle short or long later. e6 and bishop to g5, pinning the knight to the queen. So Petrosian also pins our knight to our queen, and long castles by Fischer. He really wants to win this game. Bishop e7, h3, bishop takes, queen takes, and knight to d5. Here bishop takes, queen takes, and we have this position, which does look very dry, so let's see what happens. After queen takes e7, we have king to b1, which is always a useful move since we don't want the queen to have a check here with tempo. Now rook to d8, centralizing the rook, and queen to e4, centralizing our queen. Maybe better is first dropping back the bishop to b3 or d3, since after queen to e4 we have b5 with tempo. Bishop goes to d3 and a5, so Petrosian is going for the attack. Now c3 by Fischer, since he wants to control some dark squares here. We have a light squared bishop, so we want to have our pawns on dark squares. What now? Queen d6, which controls the f4 square with the knight and the queen, so g3 to prevent the knight jumping in. But now b4. And here taking the pawn is not so good, then we have either knight takes or queen takes, and we have an isolated pawn here, which is a weakness. So after b4, we see c4 by Fischer, kicking away the knight. But after the knight moves and attacks the queen, do we not just lose a pawn here after the queen moves? Well, actually not. If you play queen e2, you cannot take the pawn here. Why can you not take the pawn? Well, after queen takes d4, we have this amazing move for white, which is a really nice tactic. I would say pause the video here and find the only winning move for white. Well, actually, it's a really nice combination. It's bishop to g6, a really crazy move. Here, the best move for Petrosian is to sacrifice the queen, since if you play queen to b6, it's actually mate in 2. Queen takes e6. And after king moves, the game would end like this. I mean, this is a really nice combination. So that's why you cannot take the pawn here. But Fischer didn't play queen e2, he played queen to e5, since if you take our queen now, we have pawn takes, tempo on the knight, knight to d7 and f4. And this is a really nice position for white. But Petrosian doesn't take the queen, but he also sees that his a5 pawn is hanging, so he plays c5. So what now? Queen to g5. Still you cannot take the pawn, since if you take the pawn now, bishop c2, and the queen doesn't really have a lot of squares left. For example, queen takes f2. Here there are 2 good moves for Fischer. For example, rook takes, king takes, and queen takes g7. Rook has to move and we take another pawn. It's equal material, but white is way better here. But even better is rook to f1, queen drops back, rook to f4. And here if the queen moves back again, we have pawn takes. And actually we're going to win the knight here, so we will win a piece. So that's why again you cannot take the pawn. Petrosian sees that, he plays h6. Now simply pawn takes, and after queen takes, we have doubled pawns for Fischer. Okay, he's up a pawn, but those are doubled. So let's see what happens. Here, a really critical position. If you castle, this is actually better for Fischer, since after castles, the king is very far away from those eventually passed pawns. Here we'd have rook to e1, knight to d7, attacking the pawn, but simply c6. Knight to c5, attacking bishop, bishop c2, rook takes, and here you cannot really defend the pawn with the rook, since rook c8 leads to c7, and if you take the pawn, it's actually checkmate. So that's why here you really need to bring the king to e7 and keep it closer to the queen side. And that's what Petrosian plays. A really nice move. Now c6 anyway, pushing the pawn. Rook to d6, rook to e1, rook takes, and rook to e5. So it took some time to win the pawn back while we developed our rook to a very active square. So what now? Attacking the pawn, rook to a8, defending it, and bishop to e4. And it looks like we're going to win a rook. Well, actually, you can take the bishop with the knight, and after rook takes, it's an equal position, but Fischer has the d file, and he has a more active position. So Petrosian here plays an interesting move. Rook to d6. Says after rook to d6, okay, we take the rook, but now Petrosian takes our rook, and after king to c2, he will go pawn hunting. So what now? After rook to f1, we see rook takes a5, rook takes f2 check, king to b3. And here, a really critical position in the game. Basically here, you have to find knight to d7. You really have to defend the queen side. But that's not what Petrosian played. He played rook to h2. And that's a losing move. Why is that a losing move? Well, he goes pawn hunting, but now we would have c5, which Fischer played. King goes to d8, rook to b5, rook takes h3. Okay, Petrosian is up a pawn, but now rook b8 check, king to c7, and rook to b7 check. And if you move back, we will win this pawn, we will eventually win this pawn, march the pawns forward, and white's in a winning position. But Petrosian didn't play king to d8, in which we would take the pawn and you take our pawn, but then we take the b4 pawn and the game would go on. But this is a winning endgame for Fischer. But he actually played king to c6. And can you see the mistake here? Why is king to c6 such a huge blunder? Well, now we have this winning move by Fischer. Pause the video again and find the winning move for white. Well, in this position, the only move that works is king to c4. And Petrosian resigned the game. Why did he resign? Look at all the squares we are controlling around the king. The bishop will have a discovered attack on the king, and wherever the rook moves here, it's actually checkmate. So you could prolong the game, give a check, pawn takes, but now there's nothing you can do. For example, well, g5, rook a7 is checkmate, rook e7 is checkmate, rook takes f7 is checkmate. This all leads to checkmate. So Petrosian resigned the game after this huge blunder, and Fischer won. I really hope you liked this video. If so, please like, subscribe or comment, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye bye.